WCNC TV Charlotte. This is Flashpoint, where power and politics collide and the tough questions get asked and answered. Now your host, Dave Wagner.
After 3.5 years in office, Anthony Foxx steps down as mayor of Charlotte. On Tuesday, he was sworn in as the nation's Secretary of Transportation, the oath administered by federal judge Nathaniel Jones, who Foxx clerked for in Cincinnati. With Foxx gone, Patsy Kinsey was selected by City Council to finish the remainder of his term. The longtime council member says she was hesitant at first, but was convinced by her colleagues.
To bring someone in for 5 months that maybe doesn't have that background, hasn't been working with all the various issues, it would be a little bit unfair.
Moments before leaving the mayor's office, I sat down with Anthony Foxx to talk about his legacy and his future in Washington. Did you ever imagine growing up in West Charlotte, little Anthony Foxx would one day be Secretary of Transportation?
Well, there have been a lot of things in my life, Dave, that I never would have imagined growing up, and I'm just pleased to have an opportunity to serve our country and honored and humbled that the president asked me to do so.
Looking back on your time as mayor, what do you want your legacy to be, and what do you see as your biggest accomplishment?
Well, you know, Dave, the interesting thing about this period of time is that it has been a period of transition. It's been a period of time when the city was going through a tremendous economic challenge, a time when we had to push the reset button and move from being more defensively minded to taking offense again as a community. And I'm very proud of the fact that psychologically we've really changed the direction of the city from 27,000 jobs lost the 2 years before I took office to now positive job growth. We've got small businesses that are feeling supported in a way they never have been before. We've made progress in housing, we've made progress in transportation, we've made progress on a number of fronts, and I'm very, very proud working together with this community that we've been able to move the city forward.
Well, you can't do everything in a city. What are some of your disappointments?
I think some of the issues that we've had to deal with over the last couple of years have exposed some fissures that exist in the community. And I think, if I had another couple of years, I probably would go out and say, we need to have a committee of 100 of people from all walks of life in this community, very diverse group of people, really talking about the future of our community across a variety of areas, whether it is in the transportation area, whether it's in the housing area, whether it's in the arts and the growth of the arts in this community, just a range of things to start the process of building the buy-in for the next 20 years. I think one of the things that I know about our city is that we're going to keep growing, the population is going to keep coming. We've got to continue making room for that new population while we're working to grow the economy, and that's a challenge to public budgets at this time. So I think the community really needs to have a level set. I think the leadership's in place. We've got a good blueprint through the capital investment plan. We also have some good efforts going on with transit, but I think the community needs to catch up to where the City Council's been trying to take us.
You've been concerned in the past about state government meddling in city affairs, as you call it. What message would you send to the state as you leave this office?
Well, look, Charlotte is a great city. It's been led by Republicans and Democrats in the past, and the city has done exceptionally well under every administration I can think of looking back over my lifetime. There's no reason why local government and the responsibilities that local government has need to change, or the dynamic between state and local government has to change. So I think, just as a general rule, I think having a respect for local priorities, a respect for local communities, and the issues that they try to tackle, I think that's really important, not only for the state, but really for not only Charlotte, but for cities across North Carolina.
Join us today, Charlotte City Councilman Michael Barnes, Wayne King, Senior Advisor to North Carolina Congressman Mark Meadows, and Eric Spanberg from the Charlotte Business Journal. Let's talk about Mayor Foxx here, his time in office here. It has not been a cakewalk for him. What did he do well? What didn't he do well?
Well, I mean, I think when you look at his legacy, he's probably going to be grateful to Ron Carley for cleaning up some messes that, occurred on his watch. He could not get the capital plan passed with a 9-2 advantage for his own party. He struggled with a streetcar, and clearly the DNC wound up with some debt. I think what he did well, obviously, is the DNC overall was a huge success. He helped recruit it, and I think that will really be the signature of his term. 2 terms.
The one thing that I would say is a highlight of his time with us was in 2006, he and I worked on the budget that passed that year, and we put police officers on the streets, made Charlotte safer. We paved roads. We did a lot of infrastructure in the city, and I think that's a positive part of his legacy. But the things you mentioned, Eric, are also a part of that history.
Yeah, you have to wonder. I mean, given his new position here, what kind of influence he might have on Charlotte, what kind of influence he might have on North Carolina.
Well, I'm hopeful it'll be a lot of influence on North Carolina. Obviously, we need a lot of transportation issues need to be fixed in this state, and I think it's important that someone from North Carolina, if it had to be somebody, I'm glad it was from somebody from North Carolina. I congratulate the mayor and hope he'll return often with some transportation needs that this state really needs.
Yeah, I know it's a short term for Patsy Kenzie, but what kind of person is she, and what kind of leadership will she offer?
Here's the great thing about Patsy. She's a Charlotte native. She served on the county commission. She's obviously been on the city council since about 2003. And she understands the challenges that we face. She also appreciates and understands the great opportunities that exist in Charlotte. I think she will be a great interim mayor.
I would just make note of the finale of Anthony Fox and the beginning of Patsy Kenzie as mayor. I mean, it was just a surreal, bizarre event. I mean, first of all, that you take the vote immediately after he walks out the door, but then going back to Anthony Fox, I mean, he had this cheerleader group literally come out of the stands.
Silver Foxes.
The Silver Foxes, and make an appearance. And then they played a video sort of highlighting his life, narrated by him as he was walking out the door. It had a strange feel to it. I think everyone is happy that he is going on to be transportation secretary. It's certainly a notable achievement for him and the community, but it was a strange end.
Do the Silver Foxes, do they go to Washington as well?
I'm sure how that pans out.
I'm sure they can sign a contract and they'll go.
Take the show on the road.
If they can bring transportation money back, people will embrace it.
Exactly right.
They could have every single groundbreaking. They could have the Silver Foxes come out. That would be interesting.
Sign a contract.
Yeah. All right, there are two Democrats, City Councilman James Mitchell and Mayor Pro Tem Pat Cannon. They are running for mayor. Former council member Edwin Peacock is the lone Republican running right now. Who has the edge at this point, do you think?
I think Patrick has the edge because he's been raising money. He's been at large in some respect or another for a good part of the last 20 years. He's well recognized, I think, throughout the city. James has been around for a long time as well, but he's been in a district, served in a district capacity. And I think the numbers are just against Edwin in terms of the Republican, Democratic, and independent numbers.
Why aren't more people coming forward to run for mayor? I mean, is it the time commitment? Is it the poor pay?
Well,
a combination of it?
It's a part-time job with a full-time schedule with part-time pay.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's hard for most people to fit themselves into that box.
Well, I mean, I look at that from the state standpoint. I mean, look, state lawmakers going over to back and forth to Raleigh. Sometimes I don't know how they stand that.
You almost have to have either independent wealth or no job at all. I mean, when you look at councils and county commissions, it's surprising how many people have, that situation, one or the other. Now, you're an exception. You're a full-time lawyer, but Patsy Kenzie's retired, for example.
Right.
And there are others who have, a lot more free time to spend on politics because it is very demanding.
Don't look at Wayne when he was vice chair of the state Republican Party. You traveled so much and got nothing for it.
Nothing for it at all. No, it came out of my pocket. So yeah, it is a big time commitment. I agree with Eric and Michael both that a lot of times it's wealthy folks or independently wealthy folks or retired people that can do those kind of jobs.
Yeah, and you sort of wonder how that influences legislation that takes place and the agenda of these folks when they're simply people who don't need money.
One other note, I'm curious to hear Michael's thought on this. How James Mitchell and Patrick Cannon being in the same party, on the same council, they know each other well. Do you think they will go after each other in a tough manner in this campaign?
I would be surprised if Patrick did that. I'd be surprised if James did it as well, but as we know, typically folks throw rocks at the leader. And so if Patrick is perceived as the front runner, there may be, stones thrown at him. But I'd be surprised if they let it degenerate in that way.
All right, well, let's move on here. Coming up, a restrictive abortion bill sneaks onto the Senate floor, prompting praise and outrage in North Carolina. But first, a quick check on your weather from the First Warn Storm Center. Protesters showed their displeasure at the state capitol on Wednesday after the Senate voted on a highly restrictive and surprise abortion bill.
We should shake our head in disgrace for trying to pull a slick one when this was an issue that deserved vigorous public discussion.
The bill requires a doctor to be physically present when a woman takes pills to induce abortion. It also prohibits gender-selective abortions and changes abortion clinic rules to make them similar to those at ambulatory surgery centers. Attorney General Roy Cooper says restricting the health care rights of women is not only bad public policy, but it will ignite even more constitutional challenges in court. That vote came down along straight party lines. 29 Republicans in favor, 12 Democrats opposed, with 9 absent. Republicans say the bill was about providing clean, safe health care for women. The Democrats say the timing of that bill is a direct response to a filibuster by a Texas state senator over an anti-abortion bill there.
You couldn't let Rick Perry get ahead of you with his follow-up actions, and you couldn't let John Kasich and his Ohio bill get ahead of you.
Talk about the race to the bottom. We don't want to race to the bottom. We're trying to race to the top in the conditions of our clinics, of all of our surgical facilities.
Well, these proposals have been floating around the legislature, but their attachment last night as an amendment to a bill to ban Sharia law came as a shock to Democrats. Republican Governor Pat McCrory seemed to agree, saying when the Democrats were in power, this is the way they did business. It was not right then. It's not right now, regardless of what party is in charge or what important issue is being discussed. The process must be appropriate and thorough. Senator Kay Hagan, a Democrat running for re-election, tweeted, as a former state senator, I am appalled at North Carolina General Assembly's actions. North Carolinians expect transparency, not procedural tricks. House Speaker Tom Tillis will have to decide how to deal with this one on the House side, while he's also gunning for Kay Hagan's seat. Is this bill going to pass the House, do you think?
I think it's very tough. And I agree with the governor, first of all, about that we need to be transparent. We promised it during the campaign, right, and we need to do exactly that. And we need to make sure that Republicans and Democrats get a fair vetting on every single piece of legislation, and the House has done that. And I'm disappointed that the Senate did not do that. I think it's very important that the people of North Carolina voted for their representatives, and they obviously sent people that they believe in to Raleigh. And if every bill should be in a committee hearing, especially something like this, even though I agree with the premise of the law.
I think there's a lot of buyer's remorse right now because people expected this legislature, based upon what it said in 2010 about creating jobs, to actually work on economic development and job creation. And what they've been doing is working on Sharia law, abortion, putting 40 kindergartners into one classroom without an assistant teacher. They hit Amendment 1. They've done everything but work on jobs, and I think people are realizing now that we made a really big mistake by handing them a supermajority in the legislature.
I think, you know, the other thing, and we've talked about this before, is the overreach factor of when you have control, dominant control of both the General Assembly and the governor's mansion. Clearly the governor's not happy about this. I think he was probably had a reasonable opinion on this. But once again, you know, controlling your allies seems more difficult than controlling your enemies. And here again we see Phil Berger and Tom Tillis, I think, are going to have a schism once more. And so what I guess the question is, who pays in 2014 and 2016? What do the voters...
what do you think the impact will be, let's say, on Tom Tillis? I mean, he is in a difficult spot right now as this bill moves over to the House. What does he do?
Right, and look, he's got, as you mentioned, Kay Hagan, who was in town this week, re-emphasized the points that you just put up there, and he is trying to show a more moderate side, I think. Clearly, we talked about the airport bill and slowing that down, and he's got a tricky fight here, although I guess with McCrory's statement, it's easier for him to slow this one down. Wouldn't you think, Wayne?
I would think so. I think it is easy, but I also believe that if it goes through the committee process, which I would hope that the Speaker would send it through the committee process and let the members vote on it as they see fit, but we're winding down the legislative days we have to be.
Yeah, back in 2011, incoming State House Speaker Tom Tillis at the time assured abortion opponents that he would work to pass legislation to limit the number of abortions performed in North Carolina. At this point, though, does he back away from that and say, I don't want this thing to go through? What will his public position?
You know, the attention and the controversy around this, I think, gives him some leeway to say, this is an important issue, but this is not the right way to approach it. That would just be my guess going into a statewide Senate campaign.
And if that happens, he'll be attacked from the right by not supporting the
legislation. I think the judgment you make there, though, is the base will turn out and vote for me anyway. They're not going to move to Hagan, so that might be the risk that you take.
Well, Senator Hagan's not exactly a bleeding left-wing liberal, so I think
I disagree with that now.
she will pick up votes from the left, from the middle, and from the right. And as I mentioned a few weeks ago, Speaker Tillis has a problem trying to figure out how to take all the filth and dirt from this legislature off of himself as he campaigns around the state.
Well, I disagree with that. Speaker Tillis has done a very good job.
That was very
No,
strong.
that's
Very strong.
When you said filth and dirt,
That was
that's where Wayne drew the line. Yeah.
Well, I think the Speaker has done a very good job in leading a very diverse group of members of the General Assembly. And whether you agree with some of the issues or not, he's had a very fair process. Democrats and Republicans have acknowledged that, that they have been able to have a very fair vetting of all bills and things, which is the thing that people believe in North Carolina. We need to keep doing that.
I'm not disagreeing with that part, Wayne. What I'm suggesting to you is that people across the state are going to hold him accountable for what the General Assembly has done, whether he supported it or not. And he's got to figure out how to extricate himself from that
It's
set
a
of
tough
facts.
position.
It really is a delicate dance. And remember, the polls that have come out show him, what, third, I think, among preferred Republican candidates. Now, maybe Virginia Fox doesn't run, and who was second? Do you remember, Wayne?
Shrewsbury was up there.
Yeah, so, I mean, maybe by default he still gets in, but...
Wayne's probably third.
And Wagner was fourth, but he needs the name recognition, but he needs to avoid the controversy.
Yeah, what impact does this have on the governor, though? This is a tough spot for him as well.
Well, I think one of the things is it looks like he's out playing ball in the yard again. I mean, you know, there's been a lot of ignoring what the governor wants, and the legislature, in some ways, in many ways, is just running over him.
He's been a non-factor, yeah.
Well, and I commend the governor for stepping out, though, against his own party and saying this is wrong, and I think you've got to applaud the governor for stepping out and making a statement about this. I think that's very applaudable.
I think it is a very strong statement, but I also think that just the action shows, you know, how much more powerful the General Assembly often is in North Carolina politics.
Who would have predicted this, though? Who would have predicted that this would happen? Where
the Democrats?
General Assembly. Well, maybe, but you get a Republican-controlled General Assembly, and then you've got a Republican in the governor's office. Who would have thought that this wouldn't go better than this? Are you surprised, Wayne?
No, I think you have growing pains. We haven't controlled both chambers in the governor's office in 125 or 140 years. So obviously, and we've got some amateurs in Raleigh. Let's be honest with each other. And we've seen some of the amateur mistakes on both sides, and that happens when you have elections. And obviously, the people of North Carolina will sort that out soon, I would think.
But a lot of clumsy strategy, which I guess it comes with the territory of having a lot of newcomers in there.
Well, this is what happens though when you have a governor who essentially is not as far to the right as a lot of the people he's having to deal with in the legislature. And you have a tremendous amount of influence from the budget director, Art Pope, over the governor and over policy. And as a result, I think he puts himself in a position, unfortunately, where the legislature can discount him. They know they can override his veto, so they really don't have to worry about much of what he thinks.
All right. A Moral Monday is growing, with protesters angry about the state slashing unemployment benefits and concerned that lawmakers are trying to restrict access to the polls when Flashpoint continues. For a ninth week, hundreds gathered for the so-called Moral Monday protests outside the State House, and 80 people were arrested. This time they protested the fact that 70,000 people in North Carolina lost their unemployment benefits this past week. The state has cut the duration people can receive unemployment benefits, as well as the average weekly benefit. That has made the state ineligible for about $700 million in federal aid to the long-term unemployed. State leaders say they're simply trying to pay back the $2.5 billion they owe the federal government. Is this necessary, or is this cruel, what they're doing to the unemployed, do you think?
It's unnecessarily cruel, because if they focused on creating jobs in the state, they wouldn't have to worry about dealing with the unemployment funding issue. But if you're going to not create jobs and cut people's unemployment benefits, then you're essentially, again, perpetuating these problems with crime and poverty throughout the state, which is not the direction that most North Carolinians want to go in.
Well, I'd say a couple things. I'd say one is you are hurting the economy because that money's not going into the hands of the unemployed, who would obviously spend it.
That's what I just said.
Right. But the second part I would say is that it is a big talking point for Democrats, witness Mr. Barnes, but also Anthony Fox closed his, you know, as he was talking about love and Bible verses, he did take time to go after that pretty hard. So did Senator Hagan when she was here. So I think this is an issue that you can expect to see Democrats campaign on.
Wayne, we have about 30 seconds here or so. Last week, the U.S. Supreme Court gutted that Voting Rights Act. This week, North Carolina Republicans are pushing for some changes, and one of the things they're talking about is voter ID. How likely do you think it is that voter ID will pass?
Oh, I think it's very likely.
Why is it necessary?
Well, I think it's necessary because we need to talk about voter fraud. We've seen it happen. We've had people admit it here in the state.
But not widespread, though.
not widespread,
Yeah.
but it's certainly, I mean, it's something that people have fought for years and years, for our right to vote, and we need to protect that and protect the integrity of the ballot. Going back to what you said about the unemployment, though, Michael, the truth of the matter is Republicans have created jobs. The governor has done things to help create jobs. The legislature has done things to create jobs. The Democrats put us in this bind about unemployment. We had no other choice but to slash some of the benefits to be able to pay back the money. That's the only choice we had unless we wanted to raise taxes. The people in this state didn't want to do that.
Other than giving pay raises to their staff, they have created no jobs. None.
So you're saying that there's been no jobs created in Charlotte because the chamber president
The jobs have been created in Charlotte have been created because of the city council and because of local businesses, not because
I'd love to hear more of
Raleigh.
this. Very little time. Back in just a moment. All right, you know, it's no wonder people can't get along in Raleigh. You guys can't get along with each other.
No, we get
y'all
along
need to work
fine.
on that.
We get along fine. You know, the issue is we're just trying to figure out, and luckily we can actually smile and laugh about some of these issues because, and unfortunately it doesn't happen in Raleigh, but if people would just come together and try to figure out how to do what's best for the state, I think everything would be fine, but that's not happening.
All right. Well, thanks to all of you. Thanks to Eric. Thanks to Michael. Thanks to Wayne as well. Thanks to you at home. Hope to see you next week for Flashpoint.